Okay, my goat is washed. My goat has lost the sauce. Okay, adult
Hello, hello.
circumcision time for Tim
I have
Walton.
Hassan up right now.
Now, what do I mean
I
by
wanted to
this?
stream
Okay, what do I mean
while
by
watching
this?
the debate.
This motherfucker came in and
I will
he came
be
in and he came out.
turning the debate
Okay, he popped
on,
off.
or maybe just
He
watching Hassan while we
single-handedly
do
brought
it.
forward an incredibly solid.
I wanted to get some
They don't cover him.
commentary
He's a
in
bad debater.
while it's
Campus think he's
going
a threat when
on.
he's nervous. That could be to that could be to ease people's expectations or set expectations low.
I'm a little chilly, so I have a blanket, I have a Sprite, I'm cozy, smoky,
I do personally think that
and I am ready
JD
to
Vance is
go.
definitely a solid attack dog because he's a disgusting person.
Sorry, there was a lot of talking going on.
He is a disgusting person. He is amoral. He is a bloodless, soulless career.
I hope everybody's ready for this debate. It should be pretty entertaining.
That type of person does fairly well in debates.
Hassan thinks that
Many politicians are. I don't think Tim Walz is.
Walls got neutered
Okay.
and
He doesn't have that smoke. You know who else didn't have that smoke, even though he's a good guy? And
JD Vance is gonna possibly take it. But
Bernie Sanders.
I think we might actually be pleasantly surprised. Well, I guess it's more so I hope that we're pleasantly surprised.
Like a debater, he was.
So I wanted to refresh, make sure everything was working okay.
Lines of attacks. Okay. Now Tim practiced with Mayo P, but it don't matter. It does not
I don't even want to
matter.
listen to those idiots.
My point is,
We might switch over.
too nice, I think. And
Hassan likes to pause or talk over when really important things are happening.
Was a very good communicator of even
Mayor of
Harris's
Commercial
dog shit
Street.
policies.
Whatever.
Okay. But ever since the rollout, they've kind of put him on the back burner. Okay? They've kind of basically cast him aside. They're like, "All right, Tim. All right, Timmy two-time. Chill the fuck out." Okay? And I personally think that given the reality that Tim already is like nice, not a very good debater, and also on top of that, the fact that he's like basically rate limited, having to defend Kamala's dog shit policies, that's a triple Monty you don't want to be on. Now, on the other side, you have Jedediah Don Vance, JD Vance, who is patently
Oh yeah, I remember what I
gross,
wanted to do.
disgusting, amoral, freakish monster.
Zoop.
Looks like a German boy whose lollipop fell on the floor and there
Damn
are
it.
ants covering it. He always is out there.
Wrong window. Trying to put this one over here.
And lolly, like
That's
what
better.
he looks like. He's nasty. He's got eyeshadow. Nobody
Bum,
likes to look at him. Everyone's like, bro, ew. Stop. Can I not look at you?
I
please?"
can't see.
Even Trump looks sexier than JD Vance. Okay?
Turn on my other light. Sorry. There we go.
Anyway,
That's probably much better. Sorry about
JD
that.
Vance has that working against them. JD Vance also disgusting podcast monster, you know, just is also like has this like nervous energy. His real fucking nervous, like please like me type energy that he has, I think comes across as really fucking gross. Okay?
Just getting everything all set
On the
up.
other hand, it seems that Lena Habba was JD Vance's debate coach.
All right.
So I don't know if this is real or not. But if it is real, he will take a L for sure. I mean, that's crazy. JD Vance is like Jeb Bush, but less sad. Yeah. He's just gross. He sucks. He is
I'll make it
brown
bigger, don't
person
worry.
through and
That's
through.
what
I
she
don't think
said.
Americans like that type of thing. Overall, think JD Vance, being the fucking gross little
There we go.
piglet that he is going to.
Man, I'm super excited for this, and Hassan's making me nervous that he's not going to switch over in time.
And maybe
We'll listen to him while we watch
how weird that is.
these
And if he can do that,
fools.
then he'll come across unscathed. But if he can't do that, and he's rate limited by Kamala's policies, and he doesn't have
At least I hope that I'm on the right one. I'm going to go back.
then he's absolutely cooked. And by cooked, I mean, ultimately it doesn't matter because the VP debates are the most inconsequential thing.
PBS.
I'll be honest with you.
Actually.
There's not a lot of motion here, okay?
Bum, bum.
There's not a lot of
I
motion
could have
here.
sworn
There's not a lot of momentum. I think the Kamala
I had. Oh, duh.
as I said, it would go away. Post DNC especially, I think it just like fucking boom. Stop that shit getting strikes. That's why you haven't seen like enough movement in the polls.
Never mind. Fuck you,
I don't
C-SPAN.
know if the media will be gracious enough not to bring up Israel, or at least the Iranian attacks. They probably have to. I mean, that's a huge story in terms of foreign policy.
We'll go back to YouTube.
But maybe they'll abide by the uniparty principle there and
I don't want to watch
ask it in a way that is
Fox.
like favorable to both parties.
No, there's CBS. We'll do that
I see
one.
people considering them more consequential than usual because Trump is brainless, so Vance is thought as the brains of the operation, and Harris didn't get a primary, so Walsh is the new blood, new quantity that people are interested in. Do you think people are that interested in it? I mean, this is a VP debate, and there's only 76,000 people in here that are waiting for it. You know? Which is the original stream, the OG stream? I guess there's 368,000 watching on CBS, so that's. You know,
That's where I'm trying to go.
watching.
I hear you have 49,000 on there, it looks like.
Is CBS the OG?
Yeah, CBS the OG, Hassan. There you go. Okay, get better quality.
Let's go! You can't fast forward through the ad breaks because at the top of the hour there's a 3-minute ad break, and if you no longer want to see those ads, you're gonna have to subscribe. Chat. Subscribe for free with Twitch Prime.
You know what's at the end of this little journey?
That's right. At the top of the hour, in the middle of the hour, there's a 1-minute ad break. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break.
Is mine behind?
For free.
Whatever.
Prime or for $6.
We'll get back to that one later.
Here it is. The night of the debate.
Woohoo!
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell.
Fucking finally.
Joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice President.
Alright, we'll turn it back
We
up.
want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and
Fuck
around
you,
the world.
Dan Bongino.
We have a consequential
Suck my
night
dick.
ahead, and our focus is the issues
I was
that
waiting
matter
for
to
that.
you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor
Debate
Tim Walz, and
night.
Ohio's Republican Senator
God, I've been
JD
looking
Vance.
forward to
Tonight,
this.
meeting for the first
Even
time.
since before the last debate. I really do hope Walls
I'm
does
Margaret
okay.
Brennan. In order to have
I am
a
super
thoughtful and
nervous.
civil debate,
TBH.
these are rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The
Excuse
other
me.
candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates.
Oh yeah, there's gonna
Enforce the
be.
rules and provide the
I don't think there's
candidates
gonna
with
be
the opportunity
live
to
fact checking,
claims made by each other.
but you can
CBS News
check it
reserves
online.
the right to mute
Or
the candidates'
maybe I
microphones
just
to
talked over
maintain
that.
Decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war.
fuck?
Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane
Already?
Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel,
Goddamn.
but that attack
Yep.
failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region.
Thank God.
over
My
the
bit rate
past year
okay?
to
Yeah,
try to
we're
prevent
okay.
a regional war.
Thank God.
Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would
bullshit.
take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Okay,
But
yeah, this ain't
the
looking too
expansion
good
of
already.
these policies
Oh
is
shit.
an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our
He needs
Israeli
to
partners and our coalition,
shift
able to
into,
stop
like,
the
third
incoming,
gear.
Attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous.
Why
His
does it
chief
look
of
so
staff, John
fuzzy?
Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being
It
he'd
just
ever
should
met.
be
And
in
both
that.
of his secretaries
That
of defense
expanded? Oh.
and his national security advisors
Yeah,
said
it's a
he
bit
should
better,
be
I guess.
nowhere near the White House. Now, the person
Fuck
closest
it.
to them,
We'll leave it like that.
to the Donald Trump, said he's unfit
No,
for the
never mind.
highest office. That was
Doesn't look
Senator
great.
Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them
Maybe.
together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President
There.
said today we
Good
will
enough.
protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator
You
Vance, the
suck.
same question.
He didn't even
Would you
bring up
support
Palestinians,
or oppose
dude.
a
He's
preemptive
so
strike
bad.
by
That
Israel
sucks.
on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting
All we can
the
hope
debate,
is that
and thanks
JD
most
Vance is
importantly
just
to the American
fucking
people who are
worse.
watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question.
God, he's so
but I want to
fucking
actually give
gross
an
and
introduction to
stupid.
myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are.
Look at that
I was
fucking
raised
face.
in a working class family. My
You
mother
just
was
wanna
on
punch it.
assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required
Okay, yeah,
Social
this
Security
is-
help to raise me. And she raised me in part
That might
because
be
my mother
okay,
mother
as long as
struggled
they're
with addiction for a
both
big chunk of my early
fucking
life.
shit.
I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the
That
White House,
every
if we get
single
Donald Trump back in
Republican
the White
has
House,
added to the
American dream
deficit
is gonna be
and
attainable once
ruined
again.
the American
Now, to
dream
answer
for
this
every
particular
single
question,
person
we
that
have
ever
to
tries to come to the
remember
United
that
States
as
or is
much as
already
Governor
born
Walz
here.
just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos. Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
Was that when he
People
got
were
laughed
afraid
out of the
stepping
UN?
out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris
Or when Trump
administration.
rolled back
Hey,
Obama
damn.
era
They use it to buy
Damn.
weapons that
The
they're now
Kamala
launching
Harris
against
administration
Iran.
loves
Flooding
God forbid, potentially
standards
launching against the
and
United States as well.
only
Donald
gave,
Trump
like,
recognized that for people to fear
a
the United
portion,
States, you needed peace
1%
through strength. They needed to recognize
of what North
that if they
Carolina
got
asked
out
for
of
the last
line,
time the
United
hurricane hit
States
them.
global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump.
I remember that.
And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump
It's
did
like, who do we
exit
want
that
in charge
deal.
of the genocide?
He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must
How is
now
that even a
make
thing?
a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once
the Republican
before. Ask
side
yourself,
is cooking on this issue.
When was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to.
I
Nora?
hate that a
Margaret,
lot.
thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than
This might actually get kind of
160
interesting.
people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance,
You think
according to
that
CBS
lady
News
is
polling,
related
7
to,
in 10 Americans and more than 60%
that one
of
actress
Republicans under the age of 45
that,
favor the U.S. taking steps to try and
was in
reduce
like,
climate
she's
change.
in a lot of shit.
Senator,
Like,
what
she was in
responsibility
Sabrina.
would the Trump
Pretty sure she was the
administration have to
devil
try
in the
and
new
reduce
Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Or like,
Sure. So
she
first
at
of all,
least
let's start with the hurricane because
trying
it's
to
an
summon the devil or
unbelievable,
something.
unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph
And
of 2 grandparents on a roof with
I
a
think she
6-year-old
was-
child, and
no,
it was
not-
the last photograph
not
ever
Miss
taken of them
Peregrine.
because the roof collapsed. And those
She's in a
innocent
lot of
people
stuff,
lost their
though.
lives.
Never
And I'm
mind.
sure Governor Walz joins me
She looks
in
a lot
saying
like
our
her,
hearts
though.
go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need
Why
their
don't
government
Republicans
to do
try
their
to
job,
offer
and I
support
commit
to
that when Donald Trump is president
families
again, the
victim of
government
gun
will put
violence?
the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster.
because there's too
Nora,
many
you
of
asked
those?
about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the
Jesus
entire
fucking
world.
Christ.
What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship.
Why are you
They
pausing
work
like
together
that?
to all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there so that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the
I guess
climate
it's
change,
all right.
there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of
That
the
is
Harris
true.
administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio.
They actually did
20
authorize
EV
like
technology that we invented
$8.5
and
billion
made 200,000
ahead of a
jobs across the
hurricane.
country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate
To
change
set
is
aside
real.
for the
They've seen
families.
500-year
But at the same
droughts,
time, we're sending
500-year floods
$68 billion
back to back.
worth
But
of
what they're doing is adapting.
arsenal
and
to
this allows
Israel
them
to kill
tell
people
me,
with, so
I harvest corn, I harvest
not exactly
soybean,
the
I
best
harvest
thing.
wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you.
It was a
Senator, I
boring
wanna give you
answer,
an
but it was a
opportunity
strong
to
answer.
respond there. The governor
Okay,
mentioned
a little
that
bit better.
President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America.
Doesn't
and
make
that's
any
not what they're
fucking
doing.
sense, bro.
So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now,
You're full of
something
shit,
that
dude.
Governor Walz
There's
said, I think,
absolutely
is
no
important to touch
statistic
upon because
that could
when
ever
we talk
show
about
that
clean energy,
we,
I think
well,
that's a
I
slogan
mean,
that
there's
often
science
the
behind
Democrats
it.
will
Yes,
use
sure.
here. I'm talking, of
But
course, about the
we're not the
Democratic leadership.
cleanest
And the real
ever
issue is that
in the
if you're
world.
spending
Pretty sure that's
hundreds
like
of
fucking
millions or even
Sweden.
billions of dollars of American
And
taxpayer
so it's
money
still just
on
a flat out
solar
fucking
panels that are made
lie.
in
Oh,
China,
there's that
number
QR
one,
code I
you're
keep
gonna
forgetting
make
to
the
do.
economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United
are, in
States of
Minnesota.
America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar
Hit him,
panels. So
Tim.
if you really
Be
Those are in
like,
Korea.
Yo, your people don't want the Green New Deal. Suck my
invest in
dick.
more energy production.
That's a good
We
point.
haven't built a nuclear facility, I think,
I really
in
hope
the
he
past
says that.
40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, you got to invest
Please bring
more
up
in
the
it.
Green New
Kamala
Deal.
Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse
your
by the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look,
Bro.
we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's
I
no
just
moratorium on that.
what
We're producing more
the
oil. But
fuck?
folks know, and like I said again,
I'm just
these are
trying to
not
get to
liberal
the
folks. These are
fucking
not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These
QR,
are farmers
bro.
that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be
CBS is
topsoil
being
from
shitty.
erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this.
Okay,
and what
I give.
Kamala Harris has been able to do in
There's probably too
Minnesota,
many people
we're
on
starting
it.
to weatherproof
Probably
some of these
fucking
things. The
crashed.
infrastructure law that was passed
Stupid.
allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time
Solid.
is up. The overwhelming consensus among
Kinda.
scientists is that the Earth's
Never
climate
mind.
is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Still
Thank you,
okay,
Nora.
though.
We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters.
Should be
Senator
interesting.
Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American
Is he gonna say
history
cats and dogs?
and to use the U.S. military to
I wish I
do
had
so.
a bigger
Could you
following
be
on
more
Twitch right
specific
now so we
about
could take bets on
exactly
if he's
how
gonna
this
say
will
cats or
work?
dogs.
For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
Good
You have 2
question.
minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing
My baby
the asylum
boy.
fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've gotta
Coming through
stop
California
the
because
bleeding.
of China,
You've gotta
bro.
re-implement
It's not
Donald
coming
Trump's
from the
border
South.
policies,
You're stupid.
Build the wall, re-implement deportations, and that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 20, 25
I
million
know I
migrants
need
in the
channel
country. What do we do
points.
with them? I think the first thing that we do is we
Now it's
start with the criminal
25.
migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think we
What?
start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you asked about
I know.
family
I need
separation.
channel
Right
points
now,
and I
in this
need
country,
polls.
We have 320,000
So we can make
children that the
bets.
Department of Homeland Security has
I'd love to
effectively
just sit
lost.
here and do
Some
that
of them have been
all
sex
night.
trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border.
What?
And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this.
No,
They're
Real
literally
Said,
putting
"You know what?
kids
I
in
don't think I'm going to
cages.
back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's
I'm
history.
Brian Kilmeade.
30% decrease in Ohio.
Said
But there's
80%
still more
Americans.
work to do. But let's
80
go
to
back to
90%
this
of
on
fentanyl.
immigration. Kamala Harris is
80
the
to 90%
Attorney
of
General
drug apprehensions
of the
are
largest
American
state, a
citizens.
border state in California. She's the only person in this race who
Fuck!
prosecuted transnational gangs
He's
for human
repeating
trafficking
Kamala
and
bought
drug interventions.
steaks!
But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we have
They're gonna
the
lose,
fairest
bro.
and the
Tim.
toughest bill on
They're gonna lose.
immigration.
You went from
that this
being
nation
a
sees.
think they might
progressive
lose.
to being a
Crafted by
fucking
conservative senator from
Democrat,
Oklahoma,
bro.
James Langford. I know him. He's super conservative.
Not very
but he's a man of
consequential,
principle,
luckily,
wants to
the
get it
VP
done.
debate, but-
Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala
Man,
Harris
this is
helped get there.
underwhelming.
1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no.
We had
Told
faith
them
in
to
you,
vote against
Tim.
it because it
You
gives
were
him
our
a campaign
Obi-Wan.
issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9
We're
years
building
after
the
he came
wall?
down that escalator,
That's your
dehumanizing
argument? We're gonna
people
build the wall?
and telling him what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up.
He just
Senator,
said we're building the wall
question
and we're
was, will you
deporting.
separate
We're the real
parents from their
deporters.
children,
We
even
ain't
if their
fake like
kids are
these
U.S.
fucking
citizens?
pussy
You have
ass
1 minute.
libtards on the
Margaret,
Republican
my point is that we already
Party.
have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace,
Children?
and it has to stop.
Children
Look,
are
I
the
think what
best
Tim
drug
said
mules.
just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out
How do they
bragging
think?
that she
How
was
do
gonna
they
undo
think
Donald Trump's
children
border
are their
policy.
drug
She did
mules?
exactly
Do they
that.
think they're
We
just
had a record
bringing
number of
along
illegal
like
crossings. We had record
a
number
very
of fentanyl coming into our
small
country.
amount at a
And
time?
Now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got
Yeah,
religion
that's
and
what
cared a lot
that's
about
what
a
it
piece of
sounds like.
legislation.
That's totally
The only
logical for a
thing that
cartel
she
to
did
do,
when
right?
she became the
They
vice
just want to
president, when she
give
became the appointed border
kilos
czar,
and
was to
kilos
undo
and kilos to
94
children
Donald Trump executive
that they can
actions that
obviously
opened the
carry
border. This
all
problem
of.
is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
I hate this. I hate this
fix
This is
debate.
gonna
It
suck.
sucks
with a
so
bill that is
bad.
necessary. But the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You
This is
demonize
really
it.
fucking stupid.
And we saw this.
I
And
agree.
Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this.
You were supposed to
That
be
vilified a
our
large
only
number of people
hope,
who were here legally in
Tim.
the community of Springfield.
Why does it matter? You want to build a
Republican
wall?
governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this,
That's an
we
interesting
dehumanize
strategy.
and villainize other human beings.
He's still attacking Trump and not attacking
Governor, your
JD
time is up.
Vance.
Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just
Interesting.
ask you the question first. The governor has made
wonder
the
what
point,
he's trying to
and I think
do.
as a sitting lawmaker, you know that
Is he trying to
Congress
make Vance
controls the
slip
purse
up?
strings and he
Because Vance
funded.
did used to talk shit
So
about
you
Trump
have
all the
said
time.
repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. and
Oh
it's actually
yeah, like
heartbreaking
the
because
bill
the
that
Border
you
Patrol
guys
agents, they
that
just
Trump
want
called
the
in and made
powers
sure
to do their
got
job. Of course,
didn't get
additional
passed in
resources
the
would
House.
help,
That would have
but
actually
most of this is about the president
funded
and the
them
They need a
more.
Vice
license to kill.
empowering our law enforcement to say, if
That's
you
what
try
they
to come
need.
across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico. You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and
Oh,
in
God.
communities all across this
Is
country,
he gonna say cats and
you've got
dogs?
schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal
If he
immigrants
doesn't
to
say
compete
cats
with
and
Americans
dogs, it's
for
just
scarce
proof he
homes.
fucking
The
made
people
it
that
up.
I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace. Tim.
Bullshit,
And I
dude.
actually
They
think-
came
I
here
agree with you. I think
legally,
he
you
wants to solve this
fucking
problem, but I
idiot.
don't think that Kamala
God,
Harris
you're so
does.
Senator,
stupid.
your time
You
is
are
up.
so
Governor, you
fucking
have 1
stupid
minute
and
to
full of
respond.
shit.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement.
Walz,
that
you better
asked for the
fucking
bill.
nail him on that.
They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up,
Get
of
pissed.
not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame.
Oh my God,
Look,
no,
this
go back to
bill
that.
Also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an
No,
asylum
you
claim
talked
to be
about a
done.
progressive
This bill
policy.
gets
Go
it done
back
in
to
90
that,
days.
bro.
Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about
Oh, God
to the
damn
least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true.
That actually
of
might
most
be good.
Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it.
You
and it
quote
lets
that
us
Bible
keep our
verse.
dignity
Thank God, dude. This bill is approved by Christian God.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
The
Thank you, Senator. We have
moderators are
so much to
helping
get to.
Tim
Margaret,
Walz.
I think it's important
We're
because
gonna turn out of the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy,
going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application.
Sorry, that was
called
probably
the
really loud.
CBP One app, where you can go on as an
Yeah,
illegal
it's a
migrant,
really
apply
good
for
app,
asylum
bro.
or apply for parole,
It
and be
literally
granted
streamlines
legal
the
status
process
at the
of
wave
getting
a
citizenship,
Kamala Harris
you
open
fucking
border
piece
law.
of shit.
That is not a person coming in applying for a
Yes, it
green card
is.
and waiting for
They
10
have to get a
years.
background
Thank you,
check,
Senator.
you fucking
Implementation of illegal
moron.
immigration, Margaret,
Oh my
by
God,
Obama
you're
Senator,
fucking
for
stupid.
describing the legal
And
process.
those laws-
We have so much to get
Opened up
to,
that-
Senator. We
Those
have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to
One
have,
app has not been on the books.
Mute him.
Yeah, tell them
Oh,
to shut
he
the
did.
fuck up.
gentlemen,
Good.
the audience can't
Good.
hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Laura.
Thank
JD
you,
Vance
Margaret.
is such
The
a
economy
fucking
is a
idiot.
top
God, I hate
concern
that dude.
for voters. Each of your
I think I might hate
campaigns
him more
has
than I hate
released an
Trump.
economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning
true.
the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And
But
Kamala
Trump's
Harris
is
and I do
like
believe in the
15
middle class
trillion,
because that's where
so
we come from. We both grew up in
just
that.
to
We
put that in
understand. So those
perspective.
of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out
Yeah,
there
talk to
is
us.
one is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then
Okay.
making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be
Okay.
prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as
There
the
we go.
housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota.
Good boy.
12% more houses in Minneapolis. Prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit. We have one in Minnesota. Reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was...
Not to mention
an
he
$8
shared
trillion
nuclear secrets
increase
with
in the
them
national
during
debt,
that
the
time, too.
largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and
Dude,
folks
notice the
have the
difference?
things that they need.
Senator, I
Notice
want
the
to give you a moment to
difference
respond on that. But
when he's
similarly,
talking about
the
some
Wharton's
dumbass right-wing border bill versus this
the
shit,
Trump
he
plan
comes alive.
and says
Right.
it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My
Fuck!
question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard
Oh, are
me
you trying to
answer
do the
a
same
lot of
shit?
what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%.
She didn't do
drive
that.
the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies
went to
deliver
Yale,
the highest
dipshit.
take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say,
Sorry,
look
bear with
at
me.
the
I'll be right
record.
back.
He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017.
That's a
and
lie.
You saw an American economic boom unlike
He's a
we've
liar.
seen
Okay,
in
back.
in this country. That is a record that I'm
Had to
proud
go
of.
get another
QR
drink.
code to
We're
find
getting
out.
back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills.
Tim looks like he
It's
wants to
gonna
say
stop
something.
when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala
Yeah.
Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our
That is
economy.
true.
We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? In the last year as president. That's
Yeah.
what's wrong with the system. There's a way around
Meanwhile,
it,
Mark
and he's
Cuban just
bragging
paid
about that.
$228
We're just
million
asking for
in
fairness in
taxes.
it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped
not
our
true.
industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were
Also, what does
wrong
that have to
about
do with
that.
any of this?
They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and
Those
the
things don't
courage
equate.
to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing
He's
American
trying to
energy.
make
We're gonna make
a
more of our own
his
stuff.
strategy
This
right
isn't
now
just
is
an
that he's
economic
making
issue. And I've got three
trying to
beautiful
make
little
an
kids
equal
at home, 7,
equivalence to
4,
something
and
that's
2.
not
I love
actually
them very
equal
much. I
just
hope
to make
they're
it
in bed
sound
right now.
like
But
what
look, so many
Tim
of the
is saying
drugs, the
isn't
pharmaceuticals
true,
that we
even
put in the
though it
bodies of our
is.
children are
It's just
manufactured by
how
nations that hate us.
Republicans
This has
try to talk
stop,
around each
and we're not
other.
going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China.
Bingo.
So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work.
And Tim's
states
trying to
make
make
more
it seem
difficult.
like
We
he
had
agrees
companies
with
that were willing to
him
ship it over,
that
and we saw people profit.
he's still trying to
Folks
turn
that-
against Trump.
Folks that are venture capital in some cases.
He's really
Putting
trying to
money
turn him
into
against
companies
Trump.
that are
That is
Like
his
his
plan.
daddy.
an agreement that we
Say
bring
it.
those home.
That's so
Like his
weird.
daddy.
Donald Trump is talking about it.
He's a
Kamala
blood
Harris
boy
has a
for
record
Peter
of
Thiel. Attack
1,000 more
him.
manufacturing
You fucking
jobs just
pussy.
getting out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
Attack
So
him!
I appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which is you've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did, and then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
The reason why he's able to even try to say these things is because Donald Trump did actually do those things, but what he's not saying is that those things have a time limit, and they are up in 2026. The economy that we've been living under has been Donald Trump's economy this entire time.
Governor, thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics, but right now I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests
excuse me,
in spring
sorry.
of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service.
Bro, okay, we
I
get
joined
it.
the National Guard
Your
at
small
17,
town.
Worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher.
We get it.
My first year out, I got the
Explain,
opportunity
though.
in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people.
So are you just trying to say that it was a lie?
Working on veterans
But people
benefits.
still
And
like
then
you?
The people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people. To make sure
Sorry,
that I do
Tim.
this
I
right.
want
will
to
say
be there
more
for
than
you, but
anything.
you're driving me
Many
crazy,
times
bro.
I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
Okay,
so I was
well.
in Hong Kong and China during the
Bro, just,
democracy
okay,
protests.
move on,
And
moderators.
from that,
Move
I
on.
learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
For fuck's sake, we get it.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance,
Yep.
in 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit
There we
for
go.
the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that
Well,
you
that's
will
not
give
nearly as
Donald
annoying
Trump the
as
advice
the one
he
Tim Walz
needs
had to
hear,
answer.
and not just the
Why don't
advice
you just attack
he
him on the
wants to
cats
hear?
and dogs
You have
shit,
2
bro?
minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also
Oh,
been
yeah?
extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly,
No, you didn't.
Donald Trump
You know he's
delivered
full of
for the
shit.
American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that
It's
works
okay.
for normal
You can say
Americans,
it.
a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020.
Tim Walz is
Margaret,
still
I've been
kind of like an
extremely
awkward dad,
consistent
though.
that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration in the first round if Congress
He really is
was
small town
doing its
America.
job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more
They
if the
killed this
Republican
man.
Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris
Tariffs
has run away from
ruin
Joe Biden's
countries.
record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor
Oh.
Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned,
At least Walz
you
might get a
signed
win
bill
here.
into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child. at 18
Goddamn,
weeks,
the
she has a
Democrats just
complication,
kill on this
tear in the
part.
membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now,
Talk
when
about the
you asked
women that
about
died
that,
literally in
Senator
the
Grant
hospital
said, "Two
parking
wrongs
lot."
don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception.
This is where you can
and
win,
limit
Tim.
Access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust
He's
doctors.
cooking.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's
Great
claim? Will you
answer.
create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew
You're
a
a
lot of
fucking
young women
idiot.
who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are going to do. I want us as the Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms.
You have literally said you wouldn't at least 8 times before this debate in recent interviews. Like within the last 2 weeks. 8 different fucking times. You said you don't support IVF treatment and that you want Project 2025 to be enacted. You fucking talking piece of shit. My cat is trying to jump up on my desk, but fell off.
And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy
Deserved.
is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion
They have
policy,
been.
and I think that's what makes
And they're
this a
overwhelmingly-
very big, a very diverse,
only
and
because
let's
he
be
is
honest,
good on the
sometimes
issue and
a
he's
very,
right on the
very
issue.
messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restricted state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman
Is this
died
one that, yep.
in that journey back and forth.
Good boy,
The
Tim.
fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your
JD
own
because his mom would have gotten one if she knew how he'd
real
be
chance
is a
that
banger.
Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you
Oh
listen to
my
Vice President
God.
Harris talk about this subject, and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His
Stop
one
agreeing
thing
with
though
him,
is
Tim.
not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He
I know
mentioned
you're
he was
trying to,
referring
like-
to a
Just
national
fucking
ban
say,
in the
what about
House.
states' rights for slavery, man? These guys are fucking ridiculous.
Or
Okay,
that.
just
15 weeks.
end the
In fact,
conversation.
you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did during when I was running for Senate in
You did,
2022
though.
talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a
A
partial
national
abortion
ban. Yeah,
in
you're
place
right.
in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not. Though I know that Democrats have
Oh my
taken a very
God.
radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an
I can't
unplanned
believe he
pregnancy
actually
as something
admitted
that's
that, to
gonna
be honest.
destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships, and we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible.
So you're
because we've gotta do a
pro-LGBTQ
better
then, is
job
that
of
what you're
and
saying?
that's what real
Pro-family?
leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice.
Keep going,
We
Tim.
know
Keep
what the
going.
implications are to not be that.
You got all the points
Women
here. This
having
is where you can
miscarriages,
overwhelm him.
Women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates.
Can we just
We
take a
understand
moment
that.
here,
We know
though,
that the options need to be available,
to go
and
back
we
to
make
what I
that
said at
clear.
the beginning
We
of
also
this
make it
debate
we're a top
about
10
how
state
I was
for the
calling
best
this
place to raise
underwhelming.
children. But these two things to try and say,
Can we just
that
take a
we're
moment
pro-children,
to
but we don't like
actually
this, or you guys are
appreciate
pro-abortion, that's not the case at all.
politics being
We are pro-freedoms
underwhelming
for women to
again?
make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case to make options for children
I cannot
more
wait
affordable, a $6,000 child tax
for
credit,
this
and
era
we're not gonna base
to
that
be
on the
over
facts of
with.
making someone like Amber Thurman
It can be
drive
over in
600
November,
miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
or it can be over
First of
November
all,
5th of
Governor, I agree.
2028.
Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe
What you gonna pull
you're
here?
free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the
pro-abortion,
law is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen. Do you want to
Can we
force
get a
Catholic
fact check on
hospitals
that
to
one?
perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of
Not that
conscience.
I actually
We can be a big and diverse country where
care,
we
'cause I
respect people's
support
freedom of conscience and make the country
that
more
anyway.
We
pro-family.
can't be
Please.
diverse though.
Yes,
No
Governor,
Haitians
please
allowed.
respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the
Okay,
physicians
come on.
who know best when they need to do this.
Come on.
Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point.
Okay.
That's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
cat.
Governor? Please tell me. What was I wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this.
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting against, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us
Okay,
from
okay.
increasing
Hiccup
funding
had to
for
come say
children.
hi to
It doesn't
everybody,
increase
but
us
then he
from
got
making sure that
shy.
once that child's born, like
He
in
doesn't wanna be
Minnesota,
on camera.
They get meals. They get early childhood education. They get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on.
I
We're
mean,
gonna
you
be right
could
back
say a
with
little
much
bit
more
more.
of the CBS News vice presidential debate. in
I think
just a
that might
moment.
actually
I'm
be how it
done.
is written.
It's so bad. Is Waltz winning or Vance? Dude, first of all,
I don't think
they got
anybody's winning
this
here.
fucking absolute hyena over here, this fucking dipshit loser, to look good. Okay? They did. For a couple different reasons. One, because the format itself actually makes it so that if you are
Wow,
a
Queso
sincere
hasn't even
person,
started
you're
streaming
gonna
yet?
look like
Thanks,
a fucking
dude.
clown ass, okay? You're gonna look like a loser. The format itself, the debate setting in general, especially if you're
Yeah, this
confident
debate
enough
does really fucking
in your
suck.
lies, definitely favors the person who's just like a relentless, shameless fucking liar. Okay? Straight up. That's just the truth. What do I mean by this? Tim Waltz is like Tiananmen Square moment or whatever the fuck, or what he
Yeah,
said about his
that
like,
was
record.
really
going to
fucking
war. Like,
bad.
these are
Shit.
genuinely tiny, minuscule flubs in comparison to being like,
Well,
I don't give a fuck. I made
you
up
can
the
say
lie that
that, but-
Haitians are eating fucking cats and dogs because the media doesn't cover it. Okay?
That's not what they're gonna
that's
focus on
not
now,
even
though.
in the same ecosystem. It is not in the same fucking planet. It's not even in the same goddamn.
So remember that,
it's
everybody.
not in the same
When you go to
universe,
work
okay?
or wherever and they start talking about how
So the idea
Tim
that
Walz
these
said
two
that,
things are then immediately
just
like
report
placed
back
upon one
with
another as though
cats
it's
and
the same
dogs.
level of,
That's
like,
all you gotta do.
lies is ridiculous. But also, on top of that,
Hi.
aside from the fucking format, Tim Walz, like I said, is shackled in this structure because he has to fucking defend idiotic propositions. You notice the difference in communication when he's talking about lowering the cost of pharmaceutical prices, lowering the cost of housing. He pops off. When he talks about defending reproductive rights for women, he pops off. Okay? Because his heart is in that. But when he's talking about fucking allowing Israel to do a first strike on Iran, are you fucking kidding me? That was the first question? Like, what a fucking morally bankrupt nation we are. That the first conversation, when you know, we have a goddamn apartheid
I'm glad you all
state
can listen
doing a
to it. Well,
genocide,
you,
opening up a
my
new front,
viewer,
okay, potentially, and escalating
get to listen to Hassan with
regional
me.
conflict into all-out nuclear war potentially. And that's the first question. Will you give Israel the first strike capabilities to fucking nuke Tehran? Like, what are we talking about? The fuck is this morally bankrupt ass bullshit, dude? God, we deserve all the bad things. I swear to God. And on that front, he sucked dick. He sucked. He sucked. He was awful at that fucking answer. He's like, oh, I think Israel has a right to defend itself October 7th. Just carbon copy Kamala Harris's talking points like a goddamn NPC. Same thing with the border proposal. Same thing with the border wall. Tim Walz has been like, the border wall when he was
my gosh.
a governor, right? Under the Trump administration.
How long is that break
Now
gonna
he's
be?
over
Is
here
he
being
really
like, We're
done?
the ones who are gonna actually push the fucking border wall. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Do you fucking hear yourself? What the hell is going on? Now, overall, I think the format and the statement itself, like the statements coming from JD Vance, are pretty solid because he thrives in this environment. He's been doing a lot of contentious adversarial interviews over and over again. He has a lot of experience. Okay? He has a lot of experience on this front, and he's looking better. And not only is he looking better despite his gross and nervous energy, okay? Despite his gross and nervous, sweaty, perverted energy that he brings to the goddamn table.
100,000 people,
format
damn,
favors him.
Hassan.
But also, he even looks better than Trump.
Holy shit, man.
Okay? That's a very significant part of this, because, like, if we're having
I don't really
adult
agree with that.
conversations, because JD Vance is supposed to be the adult, okay, the liberal media trained dipshit, okay, against Tim Walz, like, Tim Walz looks like a silly little yokel who's constantly on the back foot, and JD Vance looks like a bloodless monster who's able to communicate his desires better than Trump
Welcome back to
can.
the CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter.
Also, at the
and
top of the hour,
sentenced
there's
to
a
10
3-minute
years
ad break.
in
I
prison.
forgot to run it.
Do
I'm
you
sorry.
think
I was doing
other-
commentary.
And we don't have to worry about that
So
because I'm a
subscribe.
sub.
Curb mass
For
shootings?
$6
I'll give you
or
2
for
minutes.
free with Twitch
I'm a
Prime
sub.
to avoid
I'm
those
a
ads.
subscriber.
Here it is.
But I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no.
You can get gifted
and the
a sub
details
as well if
really
you're
matter
lucky.
here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a
I don't
father
know.
of 3 beautiful little kids.
I don't know,
Our
man.
oldest is now in
I don't know
7th
how
grade.
Republicans are going to like
And
that.
like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better.
terrible
and I think
stuff.
that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this.
Stop
The question is just
agreeing!
how do we actually do it?
Stop agreeing
Now,
with one another. I
here's
fucking
something that
hate
really
you.
bothers me and worries
I
me
agree.
about this epidemic of violence.
No
The
more
gross
agreements.
majority, close to 90% in
Fuck
some of the
you.
statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels.
Bro,
That
you
number-
are so
the
full of
amount illegal
shit.
Guns in our country is higher
Oh
today
my
than
God,
it was
that's
3.5 years
oh
ago.
my fucking
But what do
God.
we do about the schools? What do we do
Oh
to protect our
my
kids? And I think the answer
God.
is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my
I
kids
really
to go
hate
to school
the
in
fact
in a
that
school that feels unsafe or where there are
normal
visible signs of
voters
security. But I unfortunately
are
think that
going
we
to
have
watch
to
this
increase
and
security
believe
in
that.
our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger, and of course we've got to increase school resource officers, because the
What the
idea
fuck is
that we can
going
magically wave a
on?
wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with reach and experience. So we've got to make our schools safer, and I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions to how to do that.
Oh, is that right?
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Like
Well, I think
common
all the
sense
parents watching
gun
tonight,
laws?
This is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws. enhanced background checks. And we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough.
Oh my
when
God,
we know
stop
that
saying that.
I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. And I'm sorry about that, and I hope that
appreciate
you
Oh,
say,
stop.
Christ have mercy.
Jesus fucking Christ,
it is
dude.
awful. And I appreciate what Tim said.
Bro,
actually, about
if he
Finland.
found out though he lied about this, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland is, okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse, or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this
I have to
country that I really
download
do
the
think that we
fucking
need to get
CBS
to the
News
root
app
causes of,
just
because I don't think it's
to
the whole reason why we have such a bad
fact
gun
check
violence
this
problem,
shit.
but
Are
I do
you
think it's a big piece
joking?
of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here. But I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the
What?
NRA, I was NRA
He's
guy
become
for a
friends
long
with
time.
school
I used to
shooters.
keep I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is, talking about cities and where it's at, the number one
That was
where
kind
the
of silly.
most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of
Where's the
children
QR?
getting guns
Is it-
and shooting
Come on, give me the
themselves.
QR code again.
And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental
Man,
health,
this app is
just because you have a mental
fucked.
health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for
Thank
a scapegoat.
you.
Sometimes it just is the guns. It's
Thank
just the
you.
guns. And there are things that you
Good
can do about
answer.
it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity
I know
to
he
find
meant school
solutions on
shooting
this
victims,
that work,
dude. I
protect
know.
Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States.
This might
and
get
that
kinda interesting.
contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. And
You know, I really do
$10,000
appreciate
tax
that,
credit.
but I
They
don't think
also
it's going to do
promise to
anything.
build 3 million new homes.
The one thing
Where are you
that
building
she
these
has said
homes,
recently
and won't handing out that
that I'm
kind of
actually
money
excited
just
about the
drive up
most is
prices
that
higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have.
she's
first,
going
let
to
me say
do
this issue of
500,000
housing,
federal
I think those
jobs
of you listening
for
on this,
people that
the
choose not to
problem
go to
we've had is
college
that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity.
that don't require a
It can
degree
be
or
bought up,
anything.
it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance,
That was bad close,
as
but
far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any
I
of
like
this
that
plan will
our housing policy for the Republican Party is just Hitler.
minutes?
Just straight Adolf Hitler.
Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that
have any of you, has anybody
increases in illegal alien,
now or in the
alien
future
populations
listening to
under
this
Kamala Harris's leadership.
ever
Now,
bought
Tim
a
just
home?
mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent.
Do you
and
know
some
what
of
it
them I disagree with.
requires
The most important
to
thing
buy a
here is
home?
Kamala Harris is not running as
It
a
requires
newcomer to politics.
information.
She is the sitting vice president.
Like your
If she
social
wants to
security
enact
number,
all of these policies
current
to make housing
address,
more affordable,
banking
I invite her to use the
information.
office that the American
Oh,
people already gave
another
her,
thing,
not sit around
citizenship.
and do nothing
That's kind of
while Americans
crazy.
find the American
I
dream
remember
of
having to fill that
homeownership
out whenever I
completely
bought a
unaffordable.
house.
Now, you asked Margaret
So,
Miller immediately
if
change
that
the equation for
happens,
American
how
citizens.
exactly
If
can
you lower
illegal
energy
immigrant
prices, as Donald
come
Trump
here
says,
and
drill,
buy
baby, drill,
a
one of the
home
biggest
from an
drivers of housing
American
costs aside from
and
illegal
take their
immigration
home
is
to
think
make
about it.
that
If a
cost
truck driver's
rise
paying
up?
40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we
You're
open up
a
American
lying
energy, you will
piece
get
of
immediate
shit.
pricing relief for American citizens, not by the way just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where? Yeah, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national parks.
Where?
They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building
Where?
this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up.
That's super
Governor,
sus.
I do want to let you respond
Super
to
sus.
the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump
Hmm?
left office. But it's again blaming
Tackle
and
the
not trying to find a
issue.
solution.
It's not the
I was going to ask on this
crossings.
question: are we going to drill and build houses in the
Tackle
same
the
federal
issue.
land?
It's not the
He
fucking
is.
border
Shush.
These are
crossings.
federal lands. These are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look,
That's
Minnesota,
exactly what I was
we protect
thinking,
this
bro.
thing. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to
For sure.
refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator,
Don't
on that
apologize,
point,
bro.
I'd like for you to clarify, there are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well,
Answer
there's a
it,
Federal
JD.
Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices.
yeah?
Of course, Margaret,
Is
that's
that
not the
so?
entire
You have
driver
data
of higher
on it.
Housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders.
Fucking
We're a
God,
country
bro.
of doers. We're a country of explorers.
Bull fucking
We
shit.
increasingly have
Your
a
boss,
federal administration
Donald
that makes it
Trump,
harder to develop
hires
resources,
illegal
makes it harder to
immigrants
build things, and
at
makes
his
it put people
hotel.
in jail
You
for
fucking
not
idiot.
doing everything exactly as Kamala
God
Harris says
damn.
they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who
The
are willing
lies
to
that
build
come
homes
out
who
of this
aren't able
fucking
to build
person's
homes.
mouth,
I actually agree
bro.
with Tim Waltz. We should get out of this idea of housing
Stop
as a commodity.
agreeing.
But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. That in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis.
Just
I
trying
can
to
tell. But
put a
you're
jab
right.
in there to defend
One of the
Kamala.
top
Come on,
problems facing
bro.
Americans is the high cost of health care.
Defend your
Senator
position
Vance,
over
At
her.
the last presidential debate, former President Trump was
We don't
asked
care
about
about
replacing
her.
the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how
Brilliant.
chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a
That's
lot
a
of people
lie.
have criticized this concept of a
Oh,
plan.
yeah. Well,
It's very
under
simple
Donald
common
Trump,
sense.
on
I listened to Tim Walz
Obamacare,
12 years
he didn't
in
change
Congress.
anything on
I
healthcare, you
proposed a
fucking...
900-page
Bruh.
bill standing on a debate stage. It was
Bruh,
over
you
about
can't
2
take
years.
credit for
It
that.
didn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs
No, he
fell in
doesn't.
2018 for the
Oh
first
my
time in a
God.
very long time. Under
Yeah,
Kamala
and then
Harris's
Brandon
leadership, prescription drugs were
capped
up
him
about
off at
7%.
$35.
Under Donald Trump's entire 4
Donald
years,
Trump
they
did
were
not
up
do
about
that, you're lying.
1.5%.
That's
He
going to get fact
introduced
checked.
pricing
I'm 100%
transparency.
sure on
In
that because that was
healthcare,
actually
you go
fact
into a
checked in the last
hospital,
debate.
You try to buy something,
You're full
and
of shit.
nobody knows what it actually costs. That
No,
price
you're full of shit.
transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare,
Price
which was doing
transparency is such a
disastrously until
laughable
Donald Trump
joke
came along.
of a
I think this is an
healthcare
important point
solution.
about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done, but when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and
That you
healthcare
didn't
costs,
change, or that Donald Trump didn't
destroyed the
change.
program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's
Oh,
not perfect, of course,
yeah,
and there's
that
so
they had
much more
access
that
to
we can do,
Obamacare that
but
they
I think
already
that Donald
did.
Trump has earned
What the
the right
fuck are
to
you
put in
talking
place some
about?
better healthcare
He did
policies. He's
nothing
earned
with
it because
healthcare,
he did it
bro.
successfully the first time.
Governor?
Quit
All
taking
right,
credit.
being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare.
Huh, I
And
didn't know
so
that,
what
actually.
I know is under Kamala
Wonder if
Harris,
that's true.
more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden
This is
wants
about
you
to get good.
Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill.
Fuck yeah, I remember that shit.
What that means to you is
That was a
you
proud
lose your
moment in
pre-existing
American history
conditions.
right
If you're
there.
sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time
Kamala Harris.
with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it
Let him
cracked
cook
me
some
up
more.
as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept. Because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done
That's
this
true.
for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
I don't know if any of that's
Governor,
actually
thank you.
right,
Senator, you
though.
have
Some
not
of it
yet
was, but
explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
probably going to get
Well,
fact
we
checked,
currently
too.
have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep
Do
those
we?
regulations
And
in
who
place,
put
but
'em
we
there?
also want to make the health insurance marketplace
Who put 'em there,
function a
J.D.
little bit
Vance?
better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not
Republicans?
true. A lot of what happened.
You
is
think
that the reason
Republicans did
Obamacare
that?
Was crushing under its own weight is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way.
You're
that
taking
preserved
credit
people's
for
access to coverage
Democrats
who had
and
pre-existing
pushing it as
conditions.
your own
But again,
plan. You
some of these
fucking
guys do
idiot.
Is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump
God damn
becomes
it. I
president,
can't
all of
believe
these
people
terrible
are going to
consequences
believe
gonna
this
ensue.
fucking
But in
idiot.
reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he
That's
saved
because
a
nobody was
program
working
from
because we were all
Democratic administration
dying
that was collapsing
of
and
COVID.
collapsed absent his leadership. He
Good
did his job, which is
God.
govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this is young
True.
people, whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happened?
think
is
See,
that
he actually
amendments
believes
to
in
that
free
question?
health care.
I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care.
When he does that fucking side eye to the camera, that is the creepiest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. It makes me cringe and hair stand on end every single time.
Help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, "Well, I don't want
Like
to buy
that.
into
Like
Medicare
that.
for good luck
That's
buying
so
healthcare
fucking
once you
creepy,
get to
bro.
70." So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made
He's cooking,
everything
though.
better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you.
Trying
Margaret?
to.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of
Go
time.
ahead,
We have a
Laura.
number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis
Sure.
in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company.
Oh.
Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500
We're
companies.
switching to
Kamala Harris
single
knows that
person
in
now.
Or in California. those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to
get the
pay
fuck
their
back to
employees
work,
while they are
bitch?
home taking care of their newborn?
Get back to
You have
work!
2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret,
probably
a
what
number
he's
of my
gonna say.
Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who's an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful
I'm
kids, but
married
is
to a
also
female!
very, very brilliant corporate litigator, and I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinary.
He's fucking wearing eyeliner.
And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid
Look at
family
that.
leave
He's
because she
wearing
worked for
eyeliner.
a bigger company, but the cultural pressure on young families,
There's no way he's
especially
not.
young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care
so
model.
bad.
Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because look, it is unacceptable.
Can I
You know, of
say
course,
what the name of
Senator
that
Obama
was that he
campaigned for a
said?
lot the
That
past
act?
7 or 8 weeks, and one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each
By the
month.
way, moderators have
So I
been
wanna get your
carrying this
thoughts
for
on
Waltz.
this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America.
Say that last one
Penalize
again.
Companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic
That's
growth,
not going to
we're
generate
be able to
revenue.
provide paid family leave, child care
fucking
options that are
idiot.
viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the
Yeah, even
childcare
Walls looks
shortage?
stunned.
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have
What are you fucking talking about?
We're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor
My
Walz,
guy.
your
I can
ticket
drive around the
also has some
corner
childcare
3
tax
different
credit
times
proposals.
and hit
do
a
you think
fucking
Congress
daycare.
will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and
We don't have a
$3,000
shortage of
credit for children
daycare.
over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
No, we
Well,
might
if
across
these
the
members of
country. I
Congress
don't
are listening to
know.
anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to
This isn't
hear
the
it's not that
biggest
expensive.
issue.
And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that plays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarship types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the
You're
issue
both
here
talking
is
about two
the
different
question
things, Tim,
asked
and
is,
and you
you're not
know
going
it,
forward with these
my
tariffs.
boy.
That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
What you
Governor,
got,
thank
Hassan?
you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020
Hold up.
election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the
Okay,
states
never
to
mind. Maybe
submit
I'm just crazy.
alternative electors.
I swear she looked
That has
kind
been
of similar
called
to her, though.
unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Oh my
make
God,
housing
they
affordable,
didn't
make
do
groceries
that.
affordable, and that's what we're focused on.
We're
But I wanna
still
answer your
under
question
Trump's
because you did ask me.
economic
What President Trump has
policies.
said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that
That's
on
not all
January
you
the
guys
6th,
said.
the
You guys said
protesters
that
ought to
people are
protest
eating cats and
peacefully.
dogs.
And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration.
He couldn't say
I believe
lost.
that we
He's
actually
like,
do have a
January
threat
6th
to
should've-
democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala
He's like, they
Harris
should have
and Tim Walz wanna
let it
talk about.
happen
It is the threat
so
of
that Joe
censorship.
Biden could have ruined the country. Great
Americans
answer, sir. Thank
casting
you.
aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements
Oh,
over
God.
politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens, and it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've
God
seen in this country in the last
damn.
4 years, in the last 40 years.
I
Now, I'm
mean,
really proud, especially given that I was raised
on
by
one
two
hand,
lifelong
I get
blue-collar
it,
Democrats.
but
have the endorsement of Bobby
fuck?
Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't
Tulsi
agree
Gabbard,
with
a
you, Donald
lifelong
Trump.
leader in the
Issue.
Democratic
We don't
coalition.
have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind the basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to share our differences.
Oh my
One day
gosh.
I'm watching the
We ought to
fucking
try to
debate.
persuade
I'm a
our
sleepy
fellow
guy.
Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial
RFK
scale.
Jr. and Tulsi
She did it
Gabbard,
during
lifelong
COVID. She's
Democratic
done it over
leaders.
a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that
Well,
protesters should
literally
peacefully
all of
protest on
Project
January 6th.
2025 goes against the fucking
Well,
Constitution,
I've enjoyed tonight's
and
debate,
that's
and I
what you
think there's a
guys
lot of
literally
commonality
support.
here. I'm sympathetic to misspeaking
Boo!
on things, and I think
Shut
I might
the
have
fuck
with,
up!
Yeah,
with
I
the
agree.
Senator.
Don't
Me
say
too,
that
man.
shit.
There's one, though,
Stop!
this
That's
one is tough for me, and I
gross.
say that because I think we need to tell the story.
Stop
Donald Trump
agreeing!
refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up.
Oh, God damn
He
it.
was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, "We're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties." The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were
God
chanting,
damn, bro.
"Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was.
I'm pretty
a
sure he's
communicated
actually
over and
talking about
over and over.
BLM, though.
I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said, as a football
No,
coach,
no, no,
sometimes
hold
you really
on. I
wanna
think that
win,
came after.
But the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Right before this debate, by the way,
Senator Vance, did you want to respond? to
Trump
that?
literally
Yeah, well,
said
Tim, first of all, it's really rich.
he was
for
asked
Democratic
if he was
leaders
going
say
to
Donald Trump is a unique
accept
threat to
the
democracy
votes of this
when he
election
peacefully
or
gave
trust
over
the
power on
votes.
January the 20th, as we have
And he
done
literally
for
said,
250
"We'll see
years
in
this country.
33 days."
We're going to shake hands after this debate and after this election, and of course,
You're not
I
gonna
hope
shake
that we
hands
win, and
after
I
the
think we're gonna
election.
win, but if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember
good to
that
know
for
from you,
years
Vance.
in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
'Tis true.
And if we want to say that we need to
But
respect the
not
results
to
of
that
the election,
fucking
I'm on board.
extent.
But if we wanna
She
say,
still
as Tim Walz is
conceded
saying,
the
that this is
fucking
just a
election,
problem
my
that
guy.
Republicans have had, I don't
So
buy that.
you really don't get to make that claim.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue
January
was
6th
that
is so
happened.
boring.
Donald Trump, can you do it? And all of
I
us say
don't
there's
care.
no place for
I
this.
liked
has
it. I want more
massive
January
repercussions.
6s. It
This
was
idea that
funny.
there's censorship to stop
Give it
people
up.
from doing
Give it
threatening
up.
to kill
We
someone.
did more January 6s. It was
That's
very
not
funny,
censorship.
objectively.
Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought
Yeah,
up.
that book
I
banning's
just think
that's
everyone
the
denied
big
it.
one.
And I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's.
I'm glad you at
inability to
least
say he is still
821?
saying
No.
he
did
didn't lose
that.
the election. I would just have said,
No, it's
did he
not.
lose the
Oh, stop.
2020 election?
It was good that
bunch
he at
of
least said
fucking
that.
Focused on the
Fat
future. Did
Republicans trying to
Kamala
climb
Harris
over the
censor
Capitol
Americans from
wall?
speaking their mind in the wake of
To
the
do what?
2020
Take photos and
COVID
poop inside of
situation?
Nancy
Has
Pelosi's
she
office?
denied
That is a damning non-answer.
Has she, it's a
Yeah,
damning
it was
non-answer for you to not
objectively
talk
funny.
about
Sorry.
censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk
A lot
about
of
it
you are
further.
liars.
But you guys guys attack
You are
us
lying to
for not
yourselves.
believing
If you think
in
Shut
that
the
was
fuck
fucking
up.
hilarious.
sacred right under the United States democracy is the First
You're
Amendment.
fucking
You
lying.
yourself have said there's
Nobody
no First
attacked you,
Amendment right to
JD
misinformation.
Vance.
Kamala Harris has the
Threatening
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a
Oh,
threat to
like
democracy
Elon
that
Musk is
long
fucking
outlives
doing
the
with
Fourth
your
Amendment.
leaked
I would
information
recommend
right
Republicans to
now,
reject
where people haven't even
censorship.
posted the
Let's
leaked
persuade
document
one
except
another.
the page
Let's
header,
argue about
and
ideas,
Elon
then
Musk
let's
is
come
still
together
fucking banning them off Twitter,
Fire in a crowded theater.
is kind of like
That's
that.
the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing
Quit
the
fucking
freedom of
apologizing.
government, which is the right of every
You
American.
have the
Senator, the governor does have the
floor.
floor for 1 minute to
You have
respond
the
to you.
floor,
Yeah.
Tim, you
Well,
fucking pussy!
I don't run Facebook.
You
What
were
I
a
do know
goddamn
is I
veteran
see
for
a
24
candidate out there
fucking years!
confused, and now again,
Have
and this
some
is pretty
fucking
struck by this.
backbone!
He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not. It's not anything.
Oh, I'm glad I'm
other
fucking
than
stoned watching this
Donald Trump
because
Minnesotans are literally
How the
spiritually
fuck?
Canadian!
made that decision to certify that election. That's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is
ooh, nice,
where is the
nice name
firewall
call though.
with Donald Trump. Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including
Compare him to Mike
making an
Pence more. That's
election,
actually pretty fucking
and the vice
good.
president's not going to stand to it. That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that. Because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor,
You
your
mean who's
time
going
is
to
up.
try to
Thank you,
ease the
gentlemen.
genocide
We will
going
be
on?
Right back with both of our candidates. The CBS
Yo, this
News
debate
vice
sucks.
presidential
In the midst of yelling, he
debate
literally just
continues.
addressed the elephants in the room. Pence is not there. I mean, look.
I almost kind of
look,
want to
look,
switch
look.
back to watch
This-
Iran at this
debate is
point,
mid,
see what the
okay?
fuck's going on over
I
there,
know
because this is
when,
fucking crazy.
You know, when the dust settles, everyone will make up their minds, but it's just such an ass debate. Luckily for the Democrats who really care about Kamala Harris winning, let's be real, it's not all that consequential.
True.
Tim Walz has his high notes whenever he's talking about issues that he actually cares about, but god damn, dude, this is the same exact fucking thing that I felt when I watched Bernie Sanders on that goddamn stage. I was like, dude, fucking attack, dude. Attack! You're debating against a literal Hitlerian candidate who's just sitting there like a fucking insurance salesman on television telling you that the Viagra is supposed to make your dick explode and it's normal and you can't sue the pharmaceutical company. Just address any of his indignity. Address anything that he is doing. Kamala Harris
Did he just say
straight up
Kamala Harris?
whipped up Donald Trump, sauced him.
That's a
put him in
fucking good
fucking pan
name.
and fried
Not
his
gonna
ass.
lie, Trump should have came up
Okay.
with that.
Tim Walz is like, oh my god, oh, well, I agree with this guy, don't you know? Oh, I agree with him. I agree. Fucking cook his ass. He sucks. He sucks dick. He's fucking weird. You coined the weird term. Say he's fucking weird, because he's weird. God damn, dude. I want to move to Minnesota. He's talked more about how sick Minnesota is. I'm over here.
That is
looking at
fucking true.
House prices in Minnesota. I'm like, do I move there? Seems pretty good to me. Seems like a great place to live. Great governor. The fuck? Oh my god, dude. Oh my god. On the aesthetic front, it
That's
is
fucking
like
hilarious.
mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. It's crazy. Okay.
Oh my
I guess
gosh.
The hope is that like Americans will see that Tim Walz is like a fucking normal guy.
I almost wanna
even though
switch
I
over to
think he
Queso at this
destroyed that
point.
normal guy
What's he
sentiment with
playing?
The most important part of the debate, which is the first fucking answer.
If he's still playing zoology, I can't watch
I
it.
don't
really
Israel,
care. You're just
Like he
so
came across
annoying.
Israel on board.
Oh my
Up a
god.
bit and stop
Both of
yelling
those
at everyone.
issues, when
No,
everyone
I
was
can't
locked
because
in,
you-
he came across like a
Oh my
fucking,
god.
you know, empty suit. And now he comes across like a real human being.
So Queso used to play this game called Supermarket Simulator. I have it too. I fucking love it. It's right down here. Like, you literally just run a grocery store and you expand and your grocery store gets bigger. And anyway, he made it like a whole fucking story out of this game. All right, follow me here. And you can hire employees in this game. And he hired and named all the employees. And he has special interactions with each of them. And they all piss him off, you could say, to some extent. And so anyway, there's this big thing going around right now where
my daughter was killed in the Parkland shooting. It's abhorrent that Tim Walz has befriended school shooters, disqualifying. Come on, dog.
What?
Are you insane? What the? Oh, wait, is this the one guy who like, whose daughter died in Parkland, but then was like, literally, the one guy whose daughter died in Parkland, but thought that it was like fake? That's
oh
the
my
guy,
fucking
right?
god.
The one crazy one? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
That dude is so insane, dog.
Anyway, where was I? Back to queso.
Was like fake or some shit. It was insane. Anyway, fuck that guy. But also,
so right now there's this thing for streamers going around where streamers have their own AIs that they can talk to. And like, who was it? Like Emaru was talking to Emaru, and Senna was talking to Senna, Agent was talking to Agent, Kai was talking to Kai, Jinxie talked to Jinxie. But right now, Queso isn't talking to Queso AI, he's talking to one that somebody made of one of the employees that he hired at Supermarket Simulator. Also, in Supermarket Simulator, somebody's created Twitter accounts for each of them.
And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built.
Oops.
From Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift. And a whole bunch
Don't
of
bring up
folks in between.
Dick Cheney
And they
again.
don't all agree on everything.
Brian, kill
but
me.
They are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by. but
God
to
damn
get
it,
ahead.
these Kamala
And the idea that
points.
freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now look, we all know who Donald Trump is.
Is this closing
He's told us,
statements?
and as Maya Angelou said,
Yeah.
believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address.
Thank
talked
God I'm
about
fucking
American
tired, bro.
courage. And then he spent 4
Holy
years
shit.
trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class.
Yeah.
And she's centering
I
you
know.
at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone.
That makes me want to
Join
puke.
this movement. Make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Walz was kind of a
Governor
fucking bitch the
Walz,
whole time.
you
That
folks
really
at CBS And of
sucks.
course, the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy.
He was
And I
serious,
remember
though.
when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night, and because money was often
You
very
guys
tight.
literally did cover
And I
energy.
believe, as a person who wants to be your next
You
vice
said you didn't
president,
believe in solar
we're a
energy or
rich and
whatever.
prosperous enough country where every
Yeah,
American,
you guys
whether
fucking
they're rich
talked
or
about
poor, ought to be
energy,
able to
you
cook
fucking
on their
idiot.
in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy
You're
policies.
full of shit,
I
dude.
believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's
And
gotten
that's
harder
definitely full
because
of
Kamala
shit.
Harris's policies.
You don't believe that
I
one
believe
bit.
that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the
My
American
guy.
people and says that on day one she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse.
Also,
Now, I believe
for
we have
anybody
the
that
most
might
beautiful
happen to
country
watch
in the
this
world. I
video
need
some
people on the
point
campaign trail
now or
who
in the
can't afford
future,
food, but have the grace and
where
generosity
do people
to
think
ask me how I'm doing
fentanyl
and to tell me
fucking
they're praying
comes
for my
from?
family. What that has taught me
How
is
do
that
you
we have
think
the
it gets
greatest country,
made?
the most beautiful country,
Do you
the
know
most
how
incredible people anywhere
fentanyl
in
gets
the
to
world.
Give her money,
Mexico
bro.
in the
She's
first
dying.
place?
Achieve their
Who do you
full
think
dreams with the broken
produces
leadership that we have
medicine
in
like
Washington.
that?
They're not gonna be
Do you
able to
think
live their American
cartels
dream if we
make
do the same
hospital-grade
thing we've been doing for the
medication?
last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction.
I
We need a
wonder,
president who has already done this once before
could it
and did
be,
well.
oh,
Please vote for
maybe
Donald
they
Trump.
get it
And
from
whether you
our
vote for me or
hospitals
vote
and
for Tim
doctors
Walz,
that are for
I just wanna say,
buy?
I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you. Good night.
Or
Senator
our
Vance,
government
thank you.
even
My God.
delivering it to them and then selling
This
it?
debate won't move the needle, but
Like,
it's
for
not a
Christ's
good
fucking
thing,
sakes.
okay? Because the needle has
Use
to
some
move.
critical fucking
The needle has to
thinking.
move for the Democrats. It's not moving in a good direction. You feel me?
They're gonna lose
And
points.
oh my fucking lord! Oh
I
my
don't think
God,
this
what
is
an
going to have
absolutely awful,
too much of a consequence for the
pathetic
actual
fucking waste of time that was. Holy shit!
election,
dude.
but
Oh my God! I cannot be.
nobody
alone in
really
thinking this,
usually
like,
cares
please.
about vice president
Like,
debate. Kamala's was kind of big just
When we watch
because
debates like this,
of
when
that
we
situation
talk
where a
goes around,
fly
we got a
landed on
lot of
Mike
fucking
Pence's
liberals in here,
face.
right? Like a lot of fucking people that
But-
normally don't tune in, but just tune in for this type of shit. Okay? And they're
I
gonna
don't
get
know.
very mad at me when I say stuff like January 6th was objectively fine. Okay?
You're
Like,
talking to
they're gonna get mad at me,
100,000
but
people,
beyond that
Hassan.
kind of stuff,
Yeah,
beyond that kind of shit,
you probably shouldn't do your
Okay.
normal type of
I
rhetoric, bro.
personally think- I
But that's
personally
okay.
This is the Biden debate, but this motherfucker doesn't have any excuses. I know. I mean, Tim Walz didn't do as poorly as like Donald Trump did, obviously.
Whoa. There we go.
I hated it. I hated it so much. I hated it to the bottom of, from the bottom of my fucking heart. The Democratic Party is so captured by right-wing sentiment
Well, I'm not gonna make everybody sit here and listen to Hassan with me.
in the right-wing direction. It was worse than you expected.
We'll
No, I
close
mean,
that out
before
for
the debate, I
now.
told
Anyway, I had fun. I wanted to at least do one political stream. So, we'll see how things go in the future. I'd appreciate more people coming in here to talk about it. Give me a reason to talk politics, please. But thanks for hanging out and have a good night. Yep. Maybe don't have a good night. Maybe do. Okay, we're good now. Alright, bye.